Good morning to those watching in the United States. Good evening to those watching in South Korea. World leaders recently came together in Glasgow to work on bridging our differences and how we can come together to deal with the threats posed to our environment and to populations around the world from climate change. South Korea, under the Moon Jae-in administration, has also taken significant steps to increase South Korea's contributions in this effort. And we are delighted today to have Ambassador Kim Hyoeun with us today to discuss these important issues. Ambassador Kim is South Korea's ambassador and deputy minister for climate change in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. She is also the chief negotiator for the UNFCCC Paris Agreement, representing South Korea in those talks. Before taking this role, she was also the deputy director general of the Global Green Growth Institute. Ambassador Kim, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this important session.
As I mentioned in the intro, the COP26 talks in Glasgow concluded last month. There are high expectations for the summit, with some experts suggesting that this was the last chance for the world to keep the average global temperatures below 1.5 degrees Celsius. How would you assess the progress made at COP26?
There are mixed views regarding the outcome of COP26. Some say it didn't meet the expectation. Some say it produced a balanced outcome, taking into account all UNFCCC members' circumstances. I'm in agreement with the later one, because I believe that COP26, the final outcome document, Glasgow Climate Pact, is the result of very careful but tough negotiations, and also it reflects all member countries' circumstances. But we have a we are in line with 1.5 degree ambition, and also we set very good plans and timeframes regarding mitigation, adaptation finance, and finance. Therefore, as a conclusion, I'd like to say that the COP26 was successful because 120 world leaders gathered together, and then they declared their commitment regarding carbon neutrality by the middle of this century, and also 100 countries they announced their enhanced new NDCs, greenhouse gas emission cut plan. And also it is said that 90% of global GDP and 90% of global emission are now covered by net zero commitment. Actually, 2 years ago, only 30% of global GDP was covered by net zero promise. So I think we actually achieved a huge progress in that sense. And also, regarding the climate finance, because developed countries didn't meet the expectation of $100 billion annually to help developing countries, that's why some developing countries expressed their frustration regarding the outcome of Glasgow COP. However, we have a very good time frame because developed countries, they agreed to accelerate their efforts to meet the target, and also we agreed to start new post-2025 climate finance discussion from next year, and then we agreed to finalize the discussion by the end of 2024. And also, in addition to that, I'd like to highlight that even in mitigation side, although we didn't meet 1.5 degree target exactly, but according to the IEA report, if all countries will implement what they have committed, we can reach 1.8 degrees Celsius, which is lower than the previous one. And also, we agreed to invite ministers every year to discuss about what further actions to be done in order to accelerate our efforts to achieve 1.5 degree ambition. Therefore, although we didn't meet the clear target of 1.5 degrees Celsius and also 100 billion annually at this COP meeting, However, we are very close, and also we are in the right direction, and also we have a good time frame and further works to be done to meet those targets. Therefore, I would like to say that it was good meeting. We produced a lot of progress, and from now on, what we have to do is to accelerate our efforts.
I think these are important points that, while we haven't met the goal yet, there has been significant progress. And I remember, I'm originally from Tennessee, and when Al Gore was first raising this issue, how challenging it was. And so to see sort of where, it's been 20 years, but how far we've come, I think there's been a lot of progress made, especially in the last few years. There are two things you mentioned in your remarks that I want to sort of maybe, go a little deeper with you on. One is this issue of carbon net zero, which South Korea has committed to. And the other is South Korea's own commitments at COP26. And so maybe we'll start with carbon net zero. Last year, President Moon pledged that South Korea would go net zero by 2050. What sort of drove that decision, and how does Korea itself sort of see the issue of climate change and its own contributions to this issue?
Actually, many factors pushed Korea to be more proactive in climate action. By the way, I would like to touch upon, first of all, the challenge Korean economy is confronting, because in Korea, the economic growth rate is getting slower. So we needed to find a new engine of economic growth. And in addition to that, the COVID-19 pandemic, it hit the Korean economy severely as well. So it really provided the opportunity for Korea to think about resilience and sustainability in a very serious manner. And in addition to that, in Korea, air quality is really a national agenda. Maybe there are some Koreans who are not strongly interested in climate change, but every Korean is very sensitive in air pollution. Therefore, Koreans are paying attention what actions to be done in order to improve the air quality. Actually, air quality and climate action can be said as two sides of one coin, because if we reduce fossil fuel power plants, and if we reduce the combustion engine cars, and if we reduce the burning waste, then we can solve the problem of climate change and the air quality issue as well. Therefore, based on those backgrounds, Korean government announced the Korean Green New Deal in September last year in order to boost the Korean economy in front of the challenge of COVID-19, and also in order to make a transformation of the economy. And after that, when Korean New Deal was announced, many experts in Korea actually pointed out that Green New Deal must be guided with a midterm NDC and long-term carbon neutrality goal, because without a very clear signal about carbon neutrality target, it doesn't give a clear signal to the private sector where they have to put their investment for the future. And that's why taking into account the health issue of Korean people, and also in order to overcome the challenges due to COVID-19 pandemic, and in order to tackle the air pollution issue effectively, all those things just actually push the Korean government to make more revolutionary decision regarding carbon neutrality. That's why President Moon Jae-in, he announced Korea's vision to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050, October last year. And also after that, we developed we started very nationwide consultation with each stakeholders. Then we developed Korea's carbon neutrality scenario by 2050. And now we have two scenarios, the ambitious one and less ambitious one. In case we are going to take the ambitious scenario, there will be no fossil fuel like power plants at all in Korea in 2050. Based on that scenario, now Korean government is in the middle of developing national implementation plan. And also we have Carbon Neutrality Green Growth Framework Act, because so in Korea now actually net zero by 2050, that's not just a political commitment, it's in Korean, it's a legal commitment as well. And based on the legal basis now, not only central government, but also provincial governments, we all together are in the middle of developing implementation plan. And I would like to add how Korean NDC by 2030 is aligned with net zero by 2050. Korea's NDC to cut greenhouse gas emission by 40% by 2030, based on the level of 2018, it is directly linked to the goal of net zero by 2050, because from 2018 to 2050, in order to achieve the net zero by 2050, Korea, from 2018, Korea must cut every year at least 4% of greenhouse gas emission reduction. So Korea's NDC by 2030 is exactly in the trajectory of cutting emissions from 18 to 2050. So what I want to say is Korea's NDC is very well aligned with the 1.5 degree ambition. And actually in Glasgow, we agreed, I mean, the UNFCCC members agreed that we invite the member countries to revisit their NDC to check whether that plan is in line with 1.5 degree ambition or not. And if it's not in line with 1.5 degree goal, we invite those countries to strengthen their NDCs and resubmit by the end of 2022. But I'm proudly say that Korea's NDC is very well aligned with net zero by 2050, which is the goal of to achieve 1.5 degrees Celsius target. So yes, so many things actually helped push Korea to be very ambitious in climate action. But lastly, I would like to highlight that Korea's net zero scenario and Korea's NDC and Green New Deal, all those government strategies and plans are very strongly supported by people, because when Korea has like public survey, majority number of people, they support very strong action in climate change, very strong measures to take, particularly in order to improve the air pollution, air quality issue. So I'm positive that Korea is going to take actions every year to effectively implement its NDC and net zero goal.
Yeah, I think this, the concern of the public about pollution, is important in sort of showing the practical on the ground benefits as well of the transition. There's a Republican colleague of mine, and, in the United States, Republicans tend to be skeptical of climate change and whatnot. And their response to me was, everyone is against pollution. We should stop talking about climate change and just talk about, ending pollution. And so I think, there is an important connection there. One other thing that Korea committed to in Glasgow that I'd like to get your thoughts on is Korea also signed on to the global Methane Pledge, and methane is a much stronger greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. Sort of, what was some of Korea's motivation in going sort of beyond some of the traditional pledges and signing on to this as well?
Global Methane Pledge is actually, the methane is included in the Glasgow Climate Pact. And this is first time that a specific greenhouse gas is mentioned in addition to CO2, is mentioned in the UNFCCC conference document. And Korea joined the Methane Pledge, as you mentioned. Actually, Korea's methane emission doesn't occupy a significant portion of Korea's greenhouse gas emission. It's less than 4%. However, we have a strong commitment to reduce at least to 30% of methane by the year of 2030. And we believe that this commitment also contributes to reducing methane at global level. And I think one of the new characteristics of this COP26 is this kind of like coalition or alliance approach, because Methane Pledge, it's not in the official UNFCCC negotiation track. It was initiated by European Union and the United States, but more than 100 countries joined, and then they agreed to reduce methane outside of the negotiation track. But it really gives a positive impact in the global efforts to mitigate greenhouse gas emission. In addition to Methane Pledge, there are many other like partnerships or coalitions or alliances in reducing greenhouse gas emission. Therefore, I think I see a strong value of this kind of so-called off the conference room approach, which took place in this COP26. So countries, I mean, the leading countries, they took the initiative, they gathered so-called like-minded countries, and they announced a joint or collective declaration or commitment or target, and then they invite others to join when they are ready. So I believe this kind of off the conference room approach also worked very well. So that's why I think more than 100 countries joined the Methane Pledge. And in many other alliances, partnership as well, there are significant number of countries joined.
So there's one other pledge that Korea made that I'd want to touch base with you on. And, you know, South Korea itself has made significant progress in reforestation efforts. And at COP26, South Korea signed up to the deforestation commitment. President Moon, in his remarks, said that, you know, Korea pledged to, quote, actively cooperate with developing countries in their efforts for forestry recovery. How is South Korea hoping to work with developing countries on reforestation? And there's also been some discussion of perhaps this is one way to work with North Korea. So maybe if you could touch on the North Korea angle a bit as well.
South Korea is one of the model countries who successfully achieved forestation for last 50 years. What I heard from my parents, actually, when they were young, Korean mountains, very little trees, and people actually used trees for their fuels. But now, I mean, first of all, the strong government leadership to plant trees and to raise awareness to the people, the importance of trees, and also technology development and building experiences. Therefore, Korea is pretty committed to share this reforestation and other developing countries. Actually, already Korea is doing a lot of like developing in Southeast Asia, in Mongolia, in China, and even in Africa regarding forestation. We help countries to build forests And we help countries particularly combine forestation with rural community development in order to provide, to help actually. So in that sense, we are going to expand our activities with the developing countries for forestation and reforestation and also REDD as well. And in addition to that, because you mentioned about North Korea, we believe that actually forestry is the area which is very good for cooperation between the South and North, which is not politicized. And we are ready to work with North Korea when North Korea is willing to work with us. And we are ready to provide our technology or know-how or experience with them. So we do not have any specific like projects or programs currently taking place with North Korea. However, we keep sending messages to them. This is really area for future collaboration. This is an area of potential, and also this is not politicized areas. And particularly next year in 2022, World Forestry Congress, that's the biggest forestry meeting in the world, which is taking place every 5 years. The World Forestry Congress will be held in Seoul, in Korea, in May. Therefore, we believe that Congress is going to be a good opportunity, not only for other developing countries, but also for North Korea to participate in and also to discuss what to do, how to do for their forestation.
So one of the major issues in trying to address climate change is, dealing with coal and the transition from coal to clean power. At COP26, President Moon set the goal of South Korea eliminating coal power by 2050. South Korea also signed up to the Global Coal to Clean Power Transition Statement. How does Korea view the transition from coal to clean power in its own domestic context?
At the opening address of the World Leaders Summit in Glasgow, actually Prime Minister Boris Johnson, he highlighted 4 words as key areas of COP26. He said, COP26 is about coal, cars, cash, and forest. So when the world is going to phase out from coal, when the world is phasing out from combustion engine cars, and how to mobilize climate finance, and how to halt deforestation and help developing countries forestation. So those four words are the key topics of COP26. And in line with that, there were a lot of push to make things forward regarding phasing out coal. Korea joined the Clean Power Transition Initiative, and President Moon Jae-in, as you mentioned, he announced that Korea is going to be phase out coal power plants by the year of 2050. Currently, coal power plant occupies almost 40% of Korea's electricity, but we have a plan to drastically reduce the coal power plants, and we have a plan to actually close down the coal power plants. The current government already closed down 6 coal power plants, and even this year we closed additional 2. So we keep making efforts to reduce the portion of coal in our energy mix. And we believe that in order to achieve net zero commitment, we can be free from coal by the year of 2050. In order to do so, we have to drastically increase the portion of renewables in our energy mix. And also, we are going to develop new technology like green hydrogen. Because Korean economic structure is because manufacturing occupies the significant portion of Korean economy, and Korean major industry are pretty much fossil fuel dependent at this moment. We have to accelerate our actions to reduce our dependency regarding coals. So yes, so as President Moon Jae-in committed, we will implement our plan to be free from coal by 2050.
So we probably have time for maybe about one more question. And one of the things I'd like to talk with you about before we go is South Korea, either on the corporate side or government-to-government side, cooperation with other countries. In May, at the summit here in the United States, the U.S. and South Korea agreed to cooperate on climate change. Korean companies are playing a key role in our own transition for electric vehicles. President Moon called for solidarity among business leaders at APEC to achieve carbon neutrality. What are some promising areas for either government-to-government cooperation on climate change or on the corporate side?
I mean, between the United States and Korea, I believe there are many areas for mutual cooperation, particularly regarding so-called green transition. So in order to follow up the summit meeting, actually two ministers, Minister of Industry, Energy and Trade of Korea and Secretary of Energy, they met together and they agreed to start Korea-US energy policy dialogue at minister level. So regarding the policy sector, I think we can discuss together how to set up good emission trading system and how to work together to improve like energy efficiency standard, or what will be the good renewable energy policies. There are many areas to work together. And technology development, definitely this is the area for Korea and the United States to collaborate. So R&D cooperation in hydrogen, in renewable energies, and CCUS and offshore wind. There are many areas, batteries as well. In addition to the government-to-government cooperation, actually the private sectors, I think they are more active in working together, because Korean companies like LG, Samsung, even POSCO, Hyundai Motors, all of them now, they are very committed to achieve net zero by like 2050 or 2040, even earlier. And they want to work with other like global companies to accelerate their technology development. So I think actually Korean companies, they want to find new investment opportunities in the United States. And technology breakthrough can take place through the joint works by the companies, Korean companies and the United States companies. So yeah, there are many areas for possible like promising collaboration.
Well, Ambassador Kim, I'd like to thank you for taking your time. This has been a wonderful conversation. This is one of the most important issues facing the United States, facing South Korea and other countries in the world. So once again, thank you for taking the time, and look forward to talking with you again in the future on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good evening.